ISAs, otherwise known as inside sales agents, are the backbone of many top producing real estate agents' teams. However, not many people understand what an ISA properly does, and not just that, what a great ISA does. So in today's video, I have the pleasure of chatting with one of my good friends from Chicago, Jordan Pyle at Keller Williams, to talk with him and his ISA about what his ISA does, his tips, tricks, and secrets to converting leads, and the magic follow-up plan that he's used in order to get extraordinary results. So without further ado, it's my pleasure and honor to introduce you guys to Aaron and Jordan. What's up, everybody? We're back with another episode, and today I'm super stoked to have on one of my good friends, Jordan Pyle from Chicago, as well as Aaron, his ISA. So in today's video, we're going to talk about something that I get asked time and time again, which is when is the right time to hire an ISA? What does a proper ISA do? And how it can impact your business, as well as some of the exciting stuff that Jordan's got going on in terms of the Keller Williams world. So what's up, guys? Thanks so much for jumping on board today.
Thanks so much for having us, Mr. Sherrard. It's great to
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it, man.
All right, guys. So, Jordan, you and I have been talking for quite some time now. We kind of got started back when I got first in the industry, but some people might not know you. So before we get into things, I'd like to do a bit of an introduction, and then I want to touch on what you're doing in terms of the community in real estate with the Keller Williams Young Professionals Group and the like. So why don't you give yourself a brief intro, kind of go through, why and how you got into real estate, how you got to the point where you are right now, and then we'll dive into the KWYP life.
Awesome. No, perfect. So thank you for having us on again. So my name is Jordan Pyle. Like you said, I'm out of the Chicago market here. We service basically the city of Chicago and any surrounding areas, I would say within a 30-mile radius or so, maybe 15, 20, 30-mile radius. But we really focus here downtown the city. Been in the business, this is about, 5.5 years in it now, so this is year 6. About me, honestly, born and raised in a small town, Fort Wayne, Indiana. Graduated school. I was one of those crazy guys that got into real estate immediately after, getting my undergrad at Indiana University. And if I knew what I knew now about this industry, I don't know if I'd still be here today, but it's a blessing in disguise, man. We've learned a lot over the last 5 years just about, what it takes to not only be a successful business person, real estate agent, but just all the things that go into it, mentally, physically, in order to go out there every day and chase our dreams and, accomplish the goals that we have set out for ourselves. So fast forward, you kind of asked, what got me into this industry. Quite frankly, I kind of fell into it. I always was very entrepreneurial, very interested in like marketing, entrepreneurship. I always knew one day I was going to own something, right? I always knew I was going to own my own company. I didn't know what that was, but I always knew it was going to happen and that it was all going to work out at the end of the day. So fast forward now 5 years into it, I think really the trigger that led me into this was just that entrepreneurial spirit of like, okay, I'm always been a hard worker. Always kind of learned that from my dad being in sales, that, he was always the first guy to get into the office, the last guy to leave. And that he was always telling me that, you put in the hard work today and you stay focused and tunnel vision, eventually everything that you want is going to come into fruition. So now I see real estate a little bit different than I saw it then. I was like, okay, it's a splashy industry. I'm going to get in, I'm going to make a ton of money right out of the gate. And that was initially what kind of drew me to it, right? Then the reality of it all came about. And obviously everything is a little bit tougher than you think it's going to be, especially coming into a new city at 22 years old, fresh out of college, no experience in real estate or the market or the city, and having no database here, right? So one foot in front of the other. It's been a 5-year journey. I'm not the typical guy that got in like yourself, who have watched ever since you got into this industry and you started kind of exploding right away. Obviously, with a lot of hard work and discipline, it doesn't come naturally. But I was a little bit of a different story. I tripped and stumbled a little bit until I really found my lane, which then brought me to Keller Williams. And I came into Keller Williams about 2 years ago. And ever since then, something switched in my brain, which really just made real estate and building and running a real estate company all make a little bit more sense. So now here we are today. We are a small team of myself. We have Aaron, who just came on, about a month ago. He is our inside sales agent and will eventually be responsible for building out our whole lead generation division of Pyle Residential. And we have a full-time director of operations, which helps kind of keep the ship intact as we're out there going out and making sales. So that's long and short, but that's where we are today.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, thanks so much for that intro. I guess it kind of sparks another question in me before we get started in terms of the KWYP group is, we actually talked about this almost going on 2 years ago about teams and things like that. So why don't you give people a little tip as to when you found the right time was to start a team, to add the first member to your group? Because I know that's something that everybody's wondering what the best route is. And I know there's no perfect formula, but why don't you touch on how you fell into that?
Yeah, man, I think it's going to be difficult. I don't think there's any one blanket answer or approach to it by any means. People were telling me, first off, you have to have enough business where you can financially support somebody, right? But that doesn't mean you have to jump right into hiring a full-time assistant or a full-time director of operations. So what I did is I don't think I knew enough about really what I was setting out to accomplish. I wasn't crystal clear enough until I really sat down and I kind of had that internal reflection of like, I'm about to build this one way or another. It's going to work out. So I can't be scared to kind of step into the unknown, right? So it was more for me, it was like kind of ripping off the Band-Aid, knowing that I'm hiring more for growth than I'm hiring for what I currently have on my plate today. So that kind of led me to being, really just breaking down the numbers of, okay, well, what is that person, that support system going to cost me? So it was that. And then it was also starting to identify, okay, what are the things I like to do? What are my strengths? And what are the things I don't like to do? And what are my weaknesses? Why get caught up doing all the things that are going to bog us down and leave us unfulfilled? So that was the other kind of aspect. It was financial, but then also, how do we make sure that time that we spend every day in the day-to-day grind, as we all know it is a grind, how do we make sure that we're doing things that we like to do? So those two things came together, which led me to bringing on Grace, who is not on this call now. She's our director of operations. And we're only, about 5 months in with having her. So I've been a solo agent for about 5 years up until the beginning of 2019. And there's been so many different changes, but that was kind of the ultimate trigger, was like, to grow what I want to grow, I'm going to need more people. I need to attract more people into this world.
Definitely, man. Well, I guess, while we're on this topic, maybe we'll leave the young professional stuff to the end. So why don't we give Aaron an introduction, because he was the next member that you brought on. And this is going to be the hot topic that, again, everybody's curious about is, first off, who is Aaron? And then second off, how, Aaron, you can give yourself an introduction in terms of how you became an ISA and what kind of drove you into that path of lifestyle. And then Jordan, let's go back and forth between you and Aaron, talk about, when was the right time to hire an ISA? And then Aaron, you can talk about what you do and how you can be and how you should be an effective ISA. So let's start with, who is Aaron?
All right, I'm Aaron, 6'3", 230 pounds, love long walks on the beach, cuddling up with a nice book. No, I'm just kidding. My name is Aaron. I've been an ISA now for just a little over 2 years. I started out in the burbs of Chicago, a little different market. We're looking at more detached family homes than attached. So kind of learning some new stuff here, but it's fun. I got into the real estate world and I had no idea the ISA position even existed. I've always been sales driven. I love people. I'm like passionate about people. That's a weird thing to say, but I'm really passionate about talking to people. I'm a high I for our KW guys out there. I'm a high I. I'm an ID. So I like just get off on conversations. I love having a conversation with somebody, whether it's about mulch or what they had for dinner. I can talk forever. I actually met Jordan when I was trying to get involved with KWYP. I'm actually the vice president of the YP chapter out here in Chicago. He's the president. It kind of, things just sort of worked out. I think that's where we met and like sort of started this relationship. But no, so I've been an ISA for a little while now. What was the question? Who am I? What am I doing?
Yeah,
Um,
who are you? And then, how did you fall into the ISA position instead of becoming maybe an agent or instead of becoming, a transaction assistant or whatever?
yeah, so when I first got into real estate, I had a full-time job. I was working in a different industry entirely, and I wanted a way to sort of get into real estate without completely losing salary and just jumping out there. So I started talking to the TL, the team leader at the local market center, and she was like, "I'll put your name out there. If there's any opportunities, I'll let you know." Randomly get a call, "Hey, we're hiring an ISA." I said, "Sure." I thought they were hiring an EA. I had no clue. I got in and realized, oh, I like this. This is something I can really do. And then since then, it's been an ongoing journey as I learn the systems and the processes to really master this position. It went from being a stepping stone to realistically being my career. I love real estate, and I really, really love this opportunity here. It's cool.
That's fantastic, man. I'm super stoked to hear that because, it's evident that you've got a bit of a buzz around it and that this is actually a passion. It's not something you're just, dabbling with. This is something that gets you excited, which makes the results that much better, as I'm sure Jordan can tell us. But, before we get into what an effective ISA actually does, Jordan, when did you realize that you needed an ISA in order to continue to grow and help your business of Pyle Residential flourish?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I don't think I set out saying, "Hey, I'm a very like kind of analytical, meticulous person. Like I map out 5-year, 10-year visions about everything, But this one was a little bit different, quite frankly, because if you're in the Keller Williams world, it's all about models and systems, and there's a specific model that they kind of want you to follow, or that they encourage you or empower you to follow. So. But I just started realizing, I think the game is changing, and if you want to do something that no one's ever done before, you're going to have to do it a little bit differently. So yes, you can go so far with a model and system, but I think a lot of those models and systems talk about what does it look like when it's completely built? At the end of the day, what does it look like? But I was like, okay, well, that path isn't working for me. And it all came back to obviously having a certain level of production and confidence in myself that this is going in the right direction. I can take some more risks to start bringing on more people to ultimately compound our effects or our activities to lead to a bigger business that can help and service more people at a higher level. So that was the general mindset. And then it was, quite frankly, it was me meeting Aaron in a whole different regard. It was us talking about our Keller Williams Young Professionals, which is what you started the show with, or this video here. And every time I got on the phone with this guy, I just left feeling like super inspired and just super, I feel like I'm always kind of the guy that's bringing the energy to a conversation most times, but it was the complete opposite with him. He rubbed energy off on me. And when you're going by yourself so long, for 5 years, just having to motivate yourself and set goals and hold yourself accountable to it, it wears on you. As you know, I mean, you're grinding every day. And you had somewhat of a team, and then you've ultimately decided to kind of pivot and go a different direction. But it was more like, okay, I need other people around me so that I have other people that are all going towards one central mission. And like I said, the effects of that, and all of us kind of masterminding and getting together on a normal basis to plot out what our next move is, and to really pump each other up and hold each other accountable and make sure we're really optimizing our full capacities. That was more what it was. And then it just so happened to be that right around the time I was hiring for this position, I put out a post, and Aaron was kind of looking for something a little bit different. He was wanting to be a little bit more in the city versus the suburbs. His skill set just matched perfectly with my weaknesses. So my strengths are getting in front of people. If you can get me in front of somebody, whether it's at the door, whether it's in a listing appointment, buyer consultation, at a networking event, my chances of converting that person, not necessarily into a closed real estate transaction, but into a trusted partner, a trusted person in my database, my chances are pretty high. Where I wasn't so good was getting to the face-to-face, or what I like to say, getting belly to belly. And Aaron, that was where he excelled, right? So for me, it was, okay, I'm handling sales, I'm handling administrative and operational stuff, and I'm also handling that aspect of the lead generation, which is more the cold calling and more the hardcore dialing and making attempts or contacts towards these different people. So really that was kind of how it all came together. And I pitched kind of the opportunity to him, what the mission, vision, and values of what we're out here setting out to create. And we ultimately just aligned, forces, and we're not that far into it. So I would love to do another video in 6 to 12 months and see where we've gone from where we are today. But, we're rocking and rolling. He's been in the team now. I think he said about 8 or 9, 10 appointments in the last 2 weeks. We've already taken 1 listing, which is going live tomorrow. And we're rocking and rolling, man. So it's all fun, and it feels more like a team now, and it feels like it's something I look forward to waking up to every day, because not only am I bettering myself and positioning myself for a better future, but I'm empowering other people around me to also wanting to go after those same things.
Definitely, man. I think it's important to note, a couple things is, one, the team aspect and having each other pushing forward, because, as we both know, when you're solo agents, it can be, lonely, and also the accountability factor is tough, because when you have no one holding you accountable, then you can, take the afternoon off and no one says anything about it. But if you have a team that's not just depending on you, but also everybody's working towards big goals that are their own, and you are a missing cog in that, then that, it takes everybody back a whole couple steps. So, and then also the fact is just understanding weaknesses, because as agents, I'm dropping a video on Monday that's a really good one about lead generation, where the agent that I was talking with, Jason Miles from Dallas, he really doesn't like to cold call. He doesn't like to door knock. He doesn't like to do any cold prospecting. So he built his business doing these really creative and epic client appreciation events. So we get into that, but it was acknowledging what you're good at, what you're not at, and then doubling down, but also filling the roles and the voids with people that are strong at what you're not good at. So that's where our buddy Aaron comes into play, I'm sure. So Aaron, for not many people might even know what an ISA is. So why don't you touch on what an ISA is? And, there's 2 things that I'd like to break this up into to provide the most valuable as possible is, what does an ISA properly do? And what are some of the mistakes that you've either had or seen other ISAs do? Because I know some people will find an ISA and it flops because they have the wrong expectations, or the expectations aren't set, or they just don't know how to go about properly prospecting for real estate. So let's start first with, on a positive note, which is what you do well and what an ISA should be doing. And then we'll touch on some of the shortfalls and obstacles.
Yeah. All right. So great. So day-to-day stuff, my main priority is working outbound leads, essentially canceled expired listings, for sale by owners, as well as circle prospecting, not only our listings, but places we want to work. I'll start with the basics. Canceled expires and for sale by owners should be your ISA's bread and butter. That needs to be, that's like the entree of the ISA's dinner. That's the most important thing possible. You need to be focusing on that day to day. New leads need to be called right away at 8 a.m. And then I'm kind of different with FSBOs. I like to let them marinate. I don't call anybody until 3:30, and I usually let them sit for a minimum of 3 days. It's more of a personal thing, because I think usually day one sellers aren't interested in talking to an agent that first day. I kind of want them to have a couple weird people through the property first, some unqualified buyers, and then I come in to save the day. Some of the things, though, that people really do make mistakes in, and I know it sounds kind of dumb, it's metrics based. They tend to not love their losses, and that sounds kind of silly, but the most important thing to do is figure out your conversions and find the metrics that are most important to you. So for me, it's contacts, nurtures, and appointments. My goal is 1 appointment a day, 5 nurtures, and 25 contacts. I've worked out my conversion rates, so I have an idea of where I'm at. And that's basically the number one key to success. Because what happens is the ISA's day is hard. Like, realistically, you're probably going to get told F you 20 to 25 times a day. And honestly, saying F you is it light. I mean, I get called some crazy stuff. So it can be draining. But the key here is, if you know that, all right, on canceled expireds, I usually convert one for every 25 no's. Like, usually when someone gets to 20 no's, it's killing them. They're dead, they're tired, they're sick of it. for me at 20, I'm sorry, right enough, we're supposed to swear now. I'm jacked up. I am super excited at 20 no's. I'm 5 away. And at that point, I'm like, ooh, I'm all of a sudden so much more articulate. I think things are coming out of my mouth I didn't even know. And it's that like excitement because I know I'm somewhere in the ballpark of that appointment. On my previous team, I was in charge of hiring out multiple ISAs. At points, I had a team of 3. And some of the tough parts with that were it's mindset and knowing your conversion, because you can find somebody who has an incredible voice. They are so sales minded. They're excited to close, but they get bogged down in the L's. A stat I like to use, and it sucks because it's Brett Favre. He at one point held the record for most touchdowns thrown and the record for most interceptions thrown. So like the takeaway from that for me is you have to keep loving your losses, forget that last play, and go out there and try to throw a touchdown. For all young ISAs, I say track your conversion off your first 100 no's from each different category. It's really simple. It's not always the greatest out of the gate, but it's a good indicator of where you are at. And that way, when you're taking a beating, you know, hey, I'm a little bit closer to a win than I am to a loss right now. Just hang in there and keep punching. But yeah, I mean, that's for me, honestly, the most important part, hands down.
100%, man. Yeah, you know, I love the fact that you touched on knowing your numbers and also going when most are at the brink of breaking, because I even found that, you know, I built probably 50% of my business from door knocking in my first year. And that was one of the things. It's like, man, when I'd be out there and it would either be snowing or it would be hot as hell, on the days where I was like, you know what, I should probably just hit this last door and go home, and I kept going, I was always like 1 or 2 doors away from getting a couple leads and a couple new listings. And it always happened that way because you remind yourself of why you're doing this and your motivations and your goals. And then that's when some of your, again, best articulated conversations come out to play. Now, one thing that does kind of suck up here in lovely old Canada is it's actually illegal to target FSBOs, expireds, and the rest. So that makes our job a little more difficult because we have to do 100% cold prospecting through and through. But one thing that I'd like to get into, because actually the majority of my audience is in the States, is the nurturing aspect, because I find a lot of people struggle with, you know, they get one no or they get one yes. And either way, they stop there. And whether it's a yes and they call them once and then it's a maybe, they just don't continue. But as you know, knowing your numbers, it does take multiple touch points, sometimes 5 or more, in order to get that appointment or to convert them, because maybe they do want to try being a for sale by owner for a couple months. And if that couple months ends and you're not the one reaching out to them, then you better believe they're going to the next agent. So why don't you talk about the importance of nurturing, but also what sort of stats you have seen around nurturing, because that's where the bread and butter really truly is with the results.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's you hit the nail on the head. Like the wins are all in that follow-up. Like it took me maybe a year to really realize that it is your data bank. Like those people that are saying you can call me back, to ever stop calling them is just crazy to me. Like the thought like, hey, you said I could call you, but you didn't pick up twice, so I'm done, is like, it's absolutely ludicrous. So an actual stat is I'm my best at converting between the 5th and 7th touch. So once you said, hey, I can reach out, my conversion rates are so much higher between that 5th and 7th. It's usually where I'm hitting that appointment. Anywhere from like the 5th to 7th touch is huge for me. What I like to do is try to stay as organic as possible. So if it's for sale by owners, the goal for me is to always come through with abundance, and I'm always trying to help. It's not always like, hey, are you done yet? Hey, have you given up yet? It's more like, hey, I know you had an open house last week. How did it go? What are you using for a sign-in sheet? How are you getting feedback? Simple stuff like that, where I can show them my value without having to, like, in a salesy way, do it. My goal is just to always pass that beer test. If somebody be willing to have a beer with me, they'll probably let me sit down and talk to them about real estate as well. So when it comes to nurturing, I try to be as organic as possible, but I also have to understand that people are liars. Like 9 times out of 10, if you tell me, I'm going to try to sell it on my own for 3 months, you're probably going to talk to an agent in 30 days. Or if you say, hey, I'm not putting it back on the market for another year, I'm going to call you in 3 months just to be sure, because maybe something's happened, or you talked to a guy at a barbecue and he claimed that he could get you X amount for your property. And now you're thinking about it again. So the keys are with follow-up, never stop. I've converted appointments with people who didn't pick up over 20 of my phone calls. And they're like, and I had like, we work a lot of old canceled expired because it's gold. A lot of these people aren't getting called anymore. So I'll call somebody maybe 20, 30 times over the span of a year and a half. They finally pick up on that 30th time. And now they're like, oh yeah, you know what? I'm okay to talk. Because I'm probably the only agent still calling.
Aaron, maybe I think what might be valuable here is just explain a little bit about your eight call structure and how you filter in the leads, and then you go through 8 times and you reset them, cycle through.
100%. So basically, the way it works is new data gets called first thing at 8 in the morning. That's a non-negotiable. New data has to be called at 8 in the morning. From that point forward, it goes into, we have 8 buckets essentially, 1 attempt through 8 attempts. You're going to call those people 8 straight days. We take a break on the weekend. So basically, if it comes in on Monday, we call it 5 straight days. So it's not exactly 8 straight days, but it's 5 straight days. There's a gap on the weekend, and then we call them again for 3 more times on that Monday to Wednesday. At that point, it goes into our what I call the 999 bucket. It's basically our catch-all for all of our data, and that gets called every other week, the entire thing. So at a bi-weekly structure, that entire list is going to get run through. I run a very specific voicemail structure as well. The first 2 days, I do not leave a voicemail. Or attempts, and after that, I leave 2 different voicemails separated by attempts. I want them to think that I'm not a robo-dialer. A lot of times people make the mistake of using the same voicemail for all 8 attempts, and they're like, whoa, this guy's either incredible at saying the same line over and over, or it's a robot. It's 2019. Everyone is so scared I'm going to steal their credit card number. Or one lady thought I was after her AOL password. I was like, it's okay. I don't want your AOL password. We're fine. But no, like in this era, no one really trusts anybody. So it's important to always come across as a human and as organic as possible.
Yeah, and so if you don't mind me adding to that, Sherrard, is one thing that Aaron and I just got really intentional about when he came on board is we're in a shifting market here in the States. I'm not exactly sure how it is in Canada, but we've been in this incredible bull market for 10 plus years here in Chicago specifically, and in the US in general. So in this hyper locally, we've been in an extreme seller's market ever since I've been in this business for the last 5 years. So you list the property, it goes on the market, it sells with multiple offers the first weekend. Now we're starting to see things change up a little bit. We're starting to see a lot more inventory hit the market. Fortunately, interest rates are still remaining very low, so we still have a good amount of demand. But if you're not that best listing anymore, out of 10 listings, you're going to be one of those 9 that sits on the market. So our approach has been, going back to the nurturing idea, is we don't expect to get that listing appointment that first call. And if we do, great, that's cherry on the top, right? But really it's about how can we come from contribution? How can we let them know that we are here to be a resource and a soundboard for them? And most importantly, how can we educate them on what's going on in the market locally, but then also on a macro perspective? So we use different tools to explain that, to draw things out, charts, graphs, diagrams, to really make it resonate and make it hit home that, hey, if you're listing, the market's coming over the top like this, you're listing up here, you're never going to be seen in a shifting market. So what we want to do now is we want to price you ahead of the market. We want to get any improvements, repairs done so that buyers come in, they don't have to even think about what they're going to do to the property. Most millennial buyers, which is more than 50% of all home purchases here in Chicago, they weren't move-in ready. They don't want to do work, right? So if you look really good in pictures, because you get 2 clicks online. If someone clicks on your picture and they don't like what they see within 2 clicks, they're on to the next post. Or they're on to that next listing, right? So for us, it's about how can we educate sellers about the market, but then also about what makes a property sell. And it's 3 things. It's price, condition, and exposure. So we can typically diagnose the problem specifically for a canceled, expired, those type of targeted audiences. okay, well, if you're priced right and your condition's good, you're not selling, then you're probably not getting enough exposure. And then you can kind of diagnose that depending on what that particular situation is and provide more of a customized approach and not just be a robo-dialer that's just pounding the phones trying to get appointments on the first call.
That's 100%, man. I need some of that Chicago market here, because the average property here, we've got 14 months of inventory. On average, only 27% of homes are selling, and we can't do FSBOs or expires. It's a joy, man. It's just a party up here. So
you can move to the States, man.
I'm moving, man. We got to help you too with that exposure soon.
That's the next pillar, brother. That's the next pillar.
Exactly, man. No, I think that's fantastic that you know, what really should resonate with people is the fact that, you know, the 5 to 7 touch points, because again, everybody continues to give up, even though they know it's a numbers game. And I'm sure you can attest to this too. It's also a game of organization, because so many people struggle with understanding where all the leads are and where to properly track them. So I'm sure that certainly comes into play. You know, one thing that I'd like to touch on before briefly getting into the KWYP before we wrap up is, do you guys use any tools? Because I know that some people, you know, some of my buddies in the States, we use things like the Red X or Vulcan 7 or any of these different tools. Do you have any strategies and tools that you recommend for whether it be the FSBOs and the expires or the organization or anything else that you might recommend others trying out?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll take this one, Aaron. So when he came in, you know, I'm the type where I asked him, what do you need to be as successful in this position as you can possibly be? And here in the States, a lot of what you're going to hear is you got to have the combination of Vulcan 7 for the data and then the Mojo dialer for the actual dialer aspect of it. So that's what we have. We have Vulcan for our data. We also have a neighborhood function within Mojo that we can do radius search for whole different data around our just listed, just solds. So those are our main 2 components. Obviously, making sure you have the right environment, you have the nice headset, so you're coming across in a good way to those different people. I would say those are our 2 main. Yeah, there you go. Plantronics specifically.
Shout out Plantronics. See if we can get us a free headset.
But then what you mentioned though is honestly the hardest part. Is okay, now we're driving. Now he's adding nurtures to the database. We are currently today using Mojo as like our CRM. It's great because you can go in there, you can leave notes, you can put them in different buckets depending on what type of nurture they are. You can assign drip campaigns, you can schedule the appointments. And then we take that a step further, and in tandem between us 2 and also our director of operations, Grace, we use Trello for almost everything.
Oh,
so
yeah.
we have Trello boards for lead flow conversion, right? So appointment, really, it doesn't get onto that Trello board in regards to what Aaron's activities are until it becomes an appointment set. And then as soon as it's appointment set, it gets delivered over to me. And now I'm managing that process. I'm going out, meeting with that client, getting assistance from our director of operations to make sure calendars have the right information in there, making sure we're following up and we're leaving on time and we have all the right materials with us when we go out on those appointments. And then we're coming back. If I don't get that listing, it goes back in the rotation, right? But if it's something that we know is more of a nurture for me to keep onto, that's more immediate or short term, I have my own follow-up system in Trello with my own lead conversion flow so that I'm not dropping the ball and letting things slip back. So I would say the combination of Vulcan 7, Mojo, and Trello, I mean, those are really all Google products too. Also Google Suite, Drive, Calendar, email, all that. I think those 4 things are really all you need to run a nice organization.
Fantastic, man. I absolutely love that. And, you know, I find Trello boards are super useful too. We use that for all of our startups in our business as well. So
yeah.
Quickly, we'll touch on KWYP, what that is and sort of the involvement there. And then I've got one last question for Aaron. So what is the Keller Williams Professionals Group? And give us the lowdown on that.
Yeah, so something that we're both incredibly passionate about. It's kind of a little bit of a baby of mine. So when I came into Keller Williams, I was reading an article one day about this 28-year-old agent that ran a $20 million producing business that was part of this thing called KWYP, which stands for Keller Williams Young Professionals. It's a lot like any other YP network out there, or YPN networks, but it's very specific to molding the young leaders within the Keller Williams organization. So I was given an opportunity to basically head up the founding of our local Chicago chapter. It started with me and one other person, Dave Nasso. He's a good buddy and brother of mine. And we took it and we said, who else can we bring into this world? It was essentially a startup. We had very little kind of structure at that time about how to run it. But from then until now, so what is it, about a year and a half, 2 years, the organization of this network has become incredibly robust. But to sum it all up, I'll just kind of give you our mission and our vision, which our mission is that we are empowering the leaders of tomorrow today, and that our vision is that we are challenging young entrepreneurs to think bigger while manifesting massive lives through real estate. And I think those are the best two ways to really identify what it is. But I consider it a growth environment. So you come into this business, whether you're a new agent or you're just coming over from a different brokerage, and maybe you just aren't seeing the level of success or results that you want. This is somewhere that has committed individuals, committed young professionals that are serious about taking their business and their personal lives to the next level. And we're all there to support each other through education, camaraderie, and collaboration. And that is essentially what it is. And we are now, I think, number 4 or 5 in the country in terms of the amount of members that we have. I think we have about 50 members, which we meet with monthly, quarterly, different educational events, all in an effort to not only strengthen ourselves and build our own portfolio or our own resumes, but to also give back to the communities that we live, work, and play in as well. So it's very much philanthropic as well, that we want to make sure where we are doing business, we're supporting those local communities.
That's amazing, man. You know, I find more people need that, because so many new agents, or any, you know, especially the younger agents that are just getting into business, they, you know, I get so many people that reach out to me saying, Mike, I just joined a brokerage. I have no idea what to do. I've got no support. My broker's too busy. My questions aren't getting answered. I feel like I'm lost. And they have all this passion to get into the industry of real estate. And then suddenly they flop on their face and they lose that passion because it all just dwindled because of lack of support. So having a support group like that is absolutely fantastic. And I feel like there needs to be more of that in the industry.
I think the last thing I'll say on that, because I know we both all have to get off on the different things here, but is there's so many things you can do in this business, as we all know, so many shiny objects. So it helps when you're coming into something where you can say, hey, these are my strengths and weaknesses. How should I set up this business? Where it is started may not be where it ends up, right? I'm in a completely different place than when I started, and you're in a completely different direction than when you started. But the point is like, people have done what we're doing, or at least they've gotten to a certain point or a certain track that we can at least follow until we decide to start adding in that creativity. But I think the consistency comes first, and to have someone or a community of people saying, hey, try it this way, or do you need accountability with that for you to be successful in that? That's really what this provides to people, is, you know, that growth environment, as I mentioned.
That's so cool, man. I completely agree. And for those who are watching, I'm going to link all that information below in terms of getting in touch with Jordan and the KWYP group. So final questions and thoughts. Aaron, for you, my friend, for anybody that's looking to become an ISA, one thing that I've even been curious about, so pardon me for my ignorance on this question, but I've heard of different ISAs going with salary or per deal or per split. And also a lot of ISAs not jiving well because of maybe unset expectations. So for somebody that's looking to become an ISA, what do you recommend in terms of payment structure, but also what do you recommend in terms of succeeding, in terms of being able to communicate expectations to, you know, to Jordan, in the sense of being like, hey, you know, this is my workflow process. This is how long it might take me to get a deal. And what does that look like for someone that might want to follow in your footsteps?
Yeah, I think that's huge. I'll answer it in pieces here. So the first off, pay structure. A base salary is always helpful because it is you understand the sales cycle in real estate can be pretty long. So if you were on your first day, come in, set an appointment, and let's say in a perfect world, they sign that paperwork the next day, it still could be up to 90 more days at minimum before you're getting paid again. So that base salary sort of allows them to come from a place of comfort and not immediately out the gate have that commission breath, because the key to getting an appointment is having a conversation. If all you're focused on is asking for the business, you're not going to having a conversation. You're just asking somebody for the business and they're on to the next one. As far as expectations go, it's all on the 30, 60, 90. It's really smart, and it's important to key on a few key metrics as you go through it. So that first 30 days, maybe make it simple. My goal for you or for this ISA is to hit 450 dials, 4 hours on the dialer, and a minimum of 25 contacts. If they do that for 30 days, and then the next one we're going to introduce, hey, we want from 30 to 60, we want 3 set listing appointments a week. They've now built the skills to stay on the phone. Now it's about introducing conversion into that. The next step from that 60 to 90, now we're saying, hey, you're here. You understand how to do this. You have the work ethic. You understand what goes into these conversations. Now we're looking for you to convert 1 a day. So that 5 appointments a week is the key metric we're looking for. And then basically we need to work on how we get you there. Realistically, if you're expecting your ISA who doesn't have any experience to come in and just light the world on fire, you're setting them up for failure. The key here is if you understand who you're working with and make sure you're doing everything you can to educate them. Make sure they're understanding the process. But I mean, realistically, just be patient. Make sure, don't be lazy or don't back off of standards. Hold standards strong, but at the same time, be patient, because it's a grind. It's very difficult. And for some people, it clicks right away. Some people, it takes some time. But giving it that true 30, 60, 90 is so essential. I had an ISA on my previous team. I thought for sure she was a dud. She ended up being, I was like, I don't know if she's going to make it. I don't know if this is going to work out. We held true to that 30, 60, 90. Her second year, she had 45 closed transactions. Pretty cool.
Amazing.
Like, it's pretty awesome. So I think realistically, it's just about holding true to that 30, 60, 90 and working at it, because it's hard.
That's a fantastic way to do it, man. I love that you set those expectations and have at least somewhat of a structure to follow. So that's an awesome conversation, guys. I don't know, something that I always like to do is to see if you have any final words to anybody, whether it be from Jordan, who is starting and growing a team and trying to find his way through that, or Aaron, for anybody that's exploring the ISA world.
Yeah, I definitely have something there. I mean, I think at the end of the day, this business, it's awesome because there's no ceiling. There's also no floor. So you got to decide why you got in this business in the first place, right? So why you got in it and what you're ultimately wanting to accomplish. Because what I may want to accomplish could be vastly different from what Mike Sherrard or Aaron Cassar wants to accomplish. So figuring that out from the get-go is going to save you a ton of time and energy. And then once you develop clarity in that thought process, then it just requires hard work. And I will always kind of fall back on hard work. I pride myself on being one of the hardest workers I know. And I think that over time that compounds and that shows up in ways that you would never imagine. And one thing I would say, and going back to the nurture thing, is what you do today, don't expect it to show up right away. I mean, it could be 90 days, but it could also be 3.5 years. I have a deal right now that I'm trying to get. I haven't yet got this secured, but it's been 3 years of, well, call me in 6 months and we'll talk about listing it. Oh, I rented it for another year. Following up. I will get that. And one day when I get that, I'll know that all that work paid off, right? So planting seeds every day, watering them, cultivating it, you'll be surprised of what doors can open for you.
100%, man. I think that's awesome, guys. Thank you so much for coming on. And again, this is a conversation that I've been wanting to have since I got started in, because I didn't know the majority of these answers, and I think not many agents do. So, Aaron, thank you specifically for being able to share so many of the specifics, because I think the strategies that you use are, they're amazing in the sense that other people can emulate that and find comfort in knowing that this has worked for other people, because a lot of people don't know any sort of recipe because there isn't one, but at least having something that you can follow and try and emulate can make a world of a difference. And the fact that you are honest and transparent with the reality of it, in the sense of, knowing your numbers and the importance of continue to keep going when the rest are failing. So again, guys, thank you so much. I'm going to link all of their information below, so make sure you check it out. Follow them both on social media. And again, we will see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Appreciate you, man.